Hello, and welcome to your tutorial on how to run and read a diagnostic report in accelerated reading. The first thing we must do is log on to Renaissance Place. Please double-click on the Welcome to Renaissance icon on your desktop. It will look like this. It should take you to the Welcome to Renaissance Place login page. Once here, you will click on the Teacher Administrator login choice. Your username is your library number. Please type that in. Your password is your 3x4. That is the first 3 letters of your last name and the last 4 numbers of your Social Security number. Please type that in. Click Login. You should now be on your home page. From this page, we can see and do several things. Today, we will learn how to run a diagnostic report. Under the Accelerated Reader tab, please click Reports. Under the Report category, please click Reading Practice. Under the Frequently Used Reading Practice Reports, please select Diagnostic Reading Practice. On this page, you will have several choices. The first thing you need to do is select which students or class you would like to run a report for. You can also choose the drop-down menu. I will select this class to run a report for. Next, you should select the reporting period for which you would like to run the report. You can do custom dates, or you have several options in the drop-down menu. We would like you to run a diagnostic report at least once a week for the current marking period. Our current marking period right now is the first semester, so I will select this one. If you choose to run a report for more than one class, you would also want to put in a page break. You scroll down and check this box. Next, click View Report. The report should preview in a PDF format. It can be saved or printed using the Adobe Acrobat toolbar at the bottom of the page. You can also enlarge the report by clicking the plus sign. The report is usually 1 to 2 pages long, depending on the size of your class. Congratulations! You now know how to run a diagnostic report in accelerated reading. Next, we will look at how to read a diagnostic report. This is what a diagnostic report looks like. You will use this report to monitor the progress of students' overall reading comprehension. Diagnostic reports allow teachers to monitor and manage students' reading practice. The report gives you a summary of each student's overall performance as well as that of the class as a whole. It is recommended that teachers view this report at least once a week. This ensures that students who need help will receive help quickly. The first thing to look at when analyzing a report is the diagnostic codes. This will point out which students are at risk. Accelerated reading uses the average percent correct on quizzes and the number of points earned as criteria for identifying students having difficulty. Any student with an average percent correct of 85% or less needs attention. So do students who have earned less than 1/2 of the median of points earned by the group. The red arrows and the code letters indicate which students are at risk and why. A summary of the codes is found on page 2 of this report. We can tell that 2 kids are at risk because they have a low average percent correct. 2 students are at risk because they have low points earned. And 3 students we need to monitor because their percent correct average is below 85%. There are 3 key indicators that show if AR is being used successfully. 1 is the average percent correct on reading practice quizzes should be between 85 and 90%. 2, less than 10% of students should be at risk. And 3, engaged reading time should be 20 to 30 minutes long. We can get all of this information from the diagnostic report. The most important number on the diagnostic reports relate to percent correct. Percent correct shows you how well students are scoring on AR reading practice quizzes and how well they are comprehending what they read. Years of extensive research has shown that correct percent relates more closely to growth in reading than any other number. We look at percent correct in 2 ways. The first way is the average percent correct itself. Individual students should average at least 85%, with 90% or higher as the goal. Students who maintain a very high average, 90% or above, show the greatest growth in reading. For those students who are not scoring an 85% or above, teachers need to make sure they are monitoring those students. They should be taking status of the class each day. This is a 30-second to 1-minute interaction with each student during which a teacher guides book choices, checks for application of reading strategies, and monitors quiz results. This practice has proven to be singularly important to successful implementation. Other things to look for is to make sure students are reading in their zone of proximal development. This was determined by the STAR test that students took. If students are reading in their zone and are still having trouble maintaining an 85% or higher, you need to move them to the lower end of their reading zone. If they are still having trouble after that, you need to analyze why. You need to teach them simple comprehension strategies and make sure that you check with these students daily to help them practice the strategies that you are teaching them. The second indicator to show that AR is being used successfully also has to do with percent. It is the percentage of students averaging at or above 85%. Ideally, 100% of students would meet this goal. Since perfection is usually not possible, your goal should be that at least 90% of students achieve this average. That means 10% or less of students should be at risk. You can find this information on diagnostic reports on the second page right under the diagnostic code summary. Again, our goal is to try to get 10% or less students at risk. Another key indicator of successful reading practice in AR is done by the amount of points a kid earns. This is the quantity of how much they are reading. Points tell you how much reading a student has successfully completed. As with low quiz averages, there are a number of reasons for a student's point total to be low. To understand the problem, ask yourself the following questions and then take action. The third indicator that AR is being used successfully is engaged reading time, and when that time is 20 to 30 minutes. Engaged reading time is an estimate of the number of minutes per day that students are actively engaged in reading practice. To calculate engaged time, we begin with baseline data that AR has collected to show how many points students of varying abilities can be expected to earn per minute of reading practice. To find your engaged reading time, look right here on the diagnostic report. Your students will experience the most growth if they are actively engaged in the reading practice for at least 30 minutes per day for grades K through 8. That is especially true when it's coupled with a very high reading average on the quizzes. Generally speaking, the more engaged time the better, that is, up to about 60 minutes, at which point growth tends to flatten. Tips for reviewing reports. First, focus on the percentage of students averaging at or above 85% on reading practice quizzes. Once you see good progress on this indicator, you can begin to pay attention to engaged reading time. Second, look for interrelationships in the information. For example, you may notice that a class with a low average percent correct is reading a relatively low percent of fiction material, 80% perhaps. That means students are reading a fair amount of nonfiction, which is more difficult for many students. Have students been taught strategies for nonfiction? And 3, seek additional information to understand low scores. Observe classes of students that have low scores. Gather the diagnostic and student record reports for these classes to get more information about individual students' performance. This is your tutorial on how to run and read a diagnostic report. If you have any questions, please see Mrs. McSpadden at the library. Thank you.